Okay, hello. So I've decided to do this book review on a very stormy, atmospheric kind of winter's night in Cornwall. Cornwall's it's a Celtic part of the country. My background is quite Celtic as well. So I was born in Cornwall, Irish grandparents, Scottish great grandmother. And this book by Neil Gaiman, Norse Mythology, is something that I didn't really expect I'd ever read a little while ago. But I've been doing a lot of reading recently, doing a lot of listening to books on Audible as well. I do quite a lot of reviews on YouTube whenever I read a book or listen to a book. And there's a lot I want to kind of say about this book. Actually, it's an interesting one. So, like I say, I knew nothing about Norse mythology at all before looking at this book. The most I knew was seeing someone like Thor in a comic book or some of the latest Marvel sort of films that have been out. But to be honest, it didn't really appeal. I used to, when I was a kid, I used to sort of like Superman and Batman, and that was kind of about it, really. The idea of Thor, I kind of found him a bit rubbish, a bit crappy, and just wasn't really interested. But I got this book on Audible, Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman, as I say, and really, really interesting. It's kind of split up into different stories about the different gods. I've since done a bit of research since listening to it to kind of back up my knowledge a little bit, and he says, obviously, if you know anything about Norse mythology, there's only a very few stories in this book because there are so many actual stories out there, but he's basically taken a few different ones that he's considered to be interesting for whatever reason, and he's put them together in this book, and he's used his own writing as well to kind of pad it out and to kind of make it a bit more accessible, a bit more kind of readable, I suppose. So he's added his own sort of poetic license and kind of character to things, and it's really good. And actually in the audiobook, Neil Gaiman himself narrates, reads it out, which is really good because he's got a really good voice. And I think he really, like I always say whenever I listen to an audiobook where the author narrates, I think it adds an extra something. I think it gives a bit more personality and a bit more passion to the book, I think. And yeah, it's really nice. It's really atmospheric. I particularly liked Ragnarok, the last part. A lot of books like this tend to end quite kind of well, in my experience. They kind of tend to build to that thing at the end, and then it goes really well at just then as it finishes. But yeah, and Ragnarok is the end of the world for the Norse gods, and it kind of goes through what happens, all these different gods. I won't put any spoilers in, but they all have their different role to play, and they sort of die in different ways, which I knew nothing about. And it's just really atmospheric the way he writes it, just really well written. It's the sort of thing I listen to. Now I've listened to it properly, I listen to it when I'm falling asleep as well, because it's just really nice to sort of to listen to as you go off to sleep. But yeah, different chapters in it, the different gods, different stories. I can't remember how many chapters there are, but there aren't that many. It's not a massively long book. It's quite easy to get through because it's so enjoyable. It's not particularly heavy reading or anything like that, although some of the names obviously are quite difficult to pronounce, quite difficult to read if you're not used to Norse mythology. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. I really recommend this book. It's got me really interested in this kind of stuff. So I'm going to do a bit of research. There's a dictionary on Norse mythology, and I can't remember off the top of my head now who wrote it, but it comes highly recommended. If you look it up on Google, it'll come up. It's been around for quite some time, and that basically kind of lists in a dictionary kind of way all the different gods with a good bit of information about them. And yeah, it's kind of sparked my interest, really. Loki is one of the gods, and he was someone I knew nothing about before. I'd heard of Thor. I think I might have vaguely heard of one or two of the others, possibly. Although Odin I'd heard of, as well. But Loki I'd never heard of, and I think he's probably my favourite, actually. He seemed to be the most intriguing to me. His kind of dark side. But the other gods still sort of accepted him and took him under their wing, sort of thing, and hung out with him, I suppose. And I just found him really interesting. yeah, it's cool. It kind of really got my imagination going. It kind of doesn't give you enough to kind of describe things in so much detail that you've got a really clear picture. It leaves you enough space to kind of fit the pieces together in your own imagination a little bit, which I really quite like actually in a book. So yeah, that's what I like about this book. It's really kind of sparked my imagination, got me thinking creatively. I try and do a bit of writing on the side when I get time, and it's kind of inspired me a little bit with that as well. And that's kind of one of the reasons I read it, was sort of thinking, a lot of modern writing comes from old stories to a certain extent, and people are kind of motivated and inspired by old stories, and so that was one of the reasons I gave it a go. And I think for that reason alone, it kind of serves its purpose. It really gets you thinking and seeing things in a different way. And yeah, so I'm going to do a bit more research. I'm going to read a bit more around Norse mythology. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's great. Yeah, so highly recommended. Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman. Either give it a listen on Audible or one of the others that you can get it on, or give it a read. I actually bought the paperback in Asda the other day for £4.50, I think it was, so dirt cheap. It's about as cheap as you can get it, even if you're getting it second hand on World of Books or something like that. So I bought that. It's a lovely brand new copy, really nice cover on it, felt really nice, texture, real quality cover, real nice cover design as well on it. Yeah, so fantastic. So yeah, give it a go, can't recommend it enough.